Hey everybody, welcome to another Retro Game Net. I am player one, Damien DiCarlo. I also have player two, Earl Lawrence. What's going on?
Hey, how you doing, Damien? Doing very good. Good seeing
I
you.
just recovered yet again from having another bout of the coronavirus.
Wow.
So that was a lot of fun.
I'm sorry to hear that. Glad you're feeling much better. Obviously, this new variant is, impacting a lot of people, but glad that, you're doing well and that we're on this podcast and looking to move on and, make sure that you're better throughout.
The whole thing with podcasting, it's actually kind of nice that even during the pandemic that we were still able to connect with my other podcasts and then just podcasts that I know of people that I know that do this too. So I guess you could call this COVID pandemic proof, which is nice.
Right. Well, hopefully you got to play some video games as you're quarantined. That's part of the, one thing that, kind of sets you apart where you're like, okay, well, now what do I do? I can
right.
my time and now play these games I used to play in the past. And I think that's obviously it's part of the recovery. It's part of what you're supposed to do and staying in, but hopefully, and I'm glad to see that you're doing much better.
Yeah, it just needed to have recovered from just this variant really isn't as rough, obviously, for those that, well, of course, that are those that are vaccinated, but just in general, I think the Omicron is not as bad. So I am fortunate for that. So anyway, glad that you're here. I want to talk a little bit about, we're going to go into Golden Axe, but before we do that, you pulled up some news. Ladies and gentlemen, Earl Lawrence with the news and gaming.
Hello. So just wanted to discuss a couple big topics. There was a huge merger that just came out of, if you're into video games or if you're into gaming, you're into maybe stocks, you knew that, or you've heard that Microsoft has acquired big companies such as Activision, actually not such as Activision. Microsoft acquired Activision for, I think, about over $68 billion, which is huge in the whole gaming world, because that just announced, that also, with that said, it now just such franchise games such as Halo and Minecraft. Obviously, that's going to be now under the Microsoft umbrella, which, what they can do. They have all these things. I'm sure they're going to make those franchise even greater than what they are now.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like what I felt when Marvel was handed over to Disney. I just knew it would be in good hands. They're obviously successful. Microsoft, they're doing fantastic.
Yep.
I know that I don't know the numbers as far as how the new Xbox is doing. I haven't kept up with that, but I do know that they're still at it. I think that another Halo is supposed to come out, right?
I believe so. And again, under now Microsoft's vision and with their help, like you said, with Disney, these can make these games that were great even greater. And I think it's a great opportunity for, those gamers that love those franchises, because now they can possibly experience something different and expand their horizon with that new backing of Microsoft.
I would say that for Microsoft, I think I want to think of what their babies are, right? Like they got the Halo franchise. I want to say like Gears of War.
Gears of War.
Can't think of anything else that's like their baby, like right off the top of my head. I'm thinking of just those, but your Call of Duties and your Battlefields are going to be cross-platform, available on both PC and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a market for Microsoft's Xbox's games. It still hasn't changed. I think that ever since the old school Xbox, I remember when the original OG Xbox came out, that it was Halo that brought a lot of people into it, but then it was just a lot of the games that were, I guess, not easily or quickly available on the PS2 yet at the time, from my understanding. So there were some games that came out a little earlier, or just had more of a flair to bring in Xbox crowd. And I think it's kind of had that loyalty ever since then. People have been kind of still following the whole Xbox Microsoft world.
Yeah. Nintendo is offering retro game posters, video game posters, as their My Nintendo Rewards. The first three that I believe I saw released is The Legend of Zelda, Mario 64, and Star Fox. So when we talk about growing up as kids and, you have your own rooms and whatnot, and you want to decorate it and kind of make it your own. I remember, putting up video game posters and trying to wait for other posters that, let's say, Blockbuster had, or, GameStop had. And, they're obviously promoting a new game. But towards that, once that game was, over and they're putting up new posters, you would go to the manager and say, hey, what do you guys do with this poster? Can I have that poster? And they're like, yeah, you can
I
have this
remember
poster.
that. Yeah.
Sometimes they just had more
They would just
posters
dump
to give
them.
out. Yeah. And it's all free promotion. But I think that's cool that Nintendo's offering that. It gives that whole retro feel. And it's just that whole 90s thing, right? So retro's not going away. I think right now we're at a point where we're seeing a lot of 90s culture in today's world, in our 2022 environment. I think it's cool that they're offering that. But
yeah, absolutely. The whole poster thing is, yeah, it's a throwback. It's cool. A lot of people still collect them, especially if they're rare. You're gonna want the posters.
Yeah.
And I know that, like, I don't even know if GameStop does that anymore with their pre-orders. It's been a while since I've received some sort of freebie from pre-ordering a game.
Yeah, I think they've gone away with that. They're saying, okay, you guys get the game. They don't have to spend as much on advertising, probably because of social media. People take screenshots of things, post certain things. As far as now with the retro posters, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the news I had for today. Those were the two big things, or the two things that just stood out to me to bring up in today's call or podcast.
Nice. Awesome, man. Very cool. Thanks for that research. The great thing about retro gaming that I see now still relevant is that there's just all these little throwbacks that are happening. And when I've walked into a GameStop, there's just so, old school gaming will just not die. There's always going to be something. I see those little handhelds that are, that you can bring, those little Game and Watches now with, Zelda edition or with Mario, stuff like that. And people still buy it. I mean, it's still sold out some places. So I'm really happy to see that it's still out there, that people still recognize the roots of these awesome modern games. So speaking of which, we're going to go into a little game today called Golden Axe.
Yep.
Oh yeah, for the Sega Genesis.
Right.
So this was originally a arcade release. This is a classified beat 'em up hack and slash. So you can think of your IEs of Streets of Rage, or I don't know why that's the first I just thought of. Bad Dudes on the NES, like Double Dragon. Those are your beat 'em up hack and slash.
Altered Beast.
Altered Beast is one, yes.
Yeah.
So
side
I would
scrolling, side scrolling, and it's that
side scrolling. Yep.
Yep.
And it's fun because those ones, you do know the mechanics of the games. Like, that there's always a special move that you have, your basic attacks, your jumps, whatever. And even to this day, there's still hack and slashes and still beat 'em ups. I mean, Streets of Rage 4 just came out not too long ago, and that's doing well, and people well received that one. And all that is just a beautifully cell shaded 2D side scrolling. So it's really awesome. But this would be a game that came out for the Sega Genesis back in 1989, December 22nd, 1989 in North America, the 23rd of December, 1989 in Japan, and the 30th of November in 1990. So funny enough that we got it first in the North America. I didn't realize that, because the whole thing, and I remember as a kid, like, the games in Japan always came out first, and then we would get them later.
They did.
Not much later typically, but in this case, we got it by one day. And
we got spoiled by one day.
So just to kind of bring in what the overall wiki brings out of the Golden Axe, the first installment would be that it is a classified, as I mentioned, as side-scrolling hack and slash, released in 1989. It was running on the Sega System 16B arcade hardware. And it was also responsible for the creation of the previous year's Altered Beast. So the game casts players as one of three warriors who must free the fantastical land of Uria from the tyrannical rule of Death Adder, who wields the titular Golden Axe. I used to play this a lot. as a kid. And this was something that was regularly rented at my local Blockbuster video.
Yeah. Yep.
And I didn't at the time. It was weird because like I remember when I would either save up to buy my games or beg my mom to buy me one, it would be one that I was knowing for sure, like, okay, I know I love this game. I know I'm going to really get into it or whatever. But this was one that I couldn't quite make up my mind because this is, I think, from my personal experience, my very first beat 'em up hack and slash that I have ever played that I can think of right now. But I'm pretty sure this was my first one. So it was one that I continually rented.
Yep.
And I would always rent it, but I never bought it until later on when I was a collector. But what are some of your memories? I remember you and your brother talking to me about this game. What memories come off top of your head right now with this one?
This game, I always played the axe wielding dwarf. I thought it was like he was just a cool character. You know, there was different modes in this game. Like you could do the normal story mode, the arcade mode. There was a beginning mode, and there was also a duel mode. I think it's like duel or battle, where you would just fight. You'd battle characters, and more and more people would come, and you go on to the next stage, and you're battling people, and there could be two. I forgot what they're called. Two tall guys that you have to beat up, and sometimes. There's people that are on the dragon, the fire-breathing dragon, and you could knock them off, and you could jump on the dragon. I thought, at this game had so much to offer at the time, where you could follow the story, and again, it's pre-memory card, so you had to sit there to try to finish the game, because otherwise, you turn off the game, then you're kind of resetting. But it was one of those games. It wasn't as hard because when I replayed it, and I realized how fast it took me to beat it this time around. Back then, I remember playing it for hours, just trying to, enjoy the game. This time around, it was pretty quick to finish, but I think the stages and the whole story, there's this bonus rounds where you see the little elf.
The little elf or like a scroll or a squirrel or something.
Yeah, and he would have your magic potions because you would have these spells that you could do, or he would have life credits for you. He blue or green gems. And
I like how you had to beat up the little squirrel.
I know, that's the whole thing. You have to kind of kick them or nudge them or whatever, hit them with the axe or anything, whatever it is. You know what I'm talking about. And then you would see this potion come out and you would collect it. And that was after each stage. But this game is just that. Like the sound, I think more in particular, and if you can edit to play some of the sound that the game had. And I believe you could do that on the game, on the settings. You could actually listen to certain stages of the game, and I could hear it in my head now.
Right.
The music that it had, it was like it drew you into the game more than what maybe previous games had. Like when you hear a song, you're like, oh, I know where that's from. This game has that feel, that trigger where you're like, oh, that sounds like it's been in this movie. Or you would see, let's say where you're choosing the player, and it's a hand of a skull, and then it's the Conan the Barbarian guy, it's the Amazon woman, and then the dwarf, and then you could, you just left, right, you'd see their names, but you could still hear the sound when you're picking that character.
Yeah, I can hear it right now as he's talking about it.
Yeah.
It's
pretty cool.
People, it's funny. It's how that works. Some things I will forget like within 10 minutes of you talking to me, but when it comes to a sound or some sort of the visual that I only saw like a few times as a kid, oh man, it'll just come right back like that.
and that's the nostalgic memories that you have. That little sound beat, that your vision, you're seeing the characters, you're seeing something, you're bumping into the enemy, because that was a fighting move that you did. And go into more depth of the game, that dual battle mode, if you timed it right, you could actually beat the kind of that whole battle game by just doing the nudge. You know how they would run, and then or the character would run and it would leap and knock the person down, and then let's say you're fighting two. If you timed it right, you can just go by jumping to each one till they technically die. Right.
And I did appreciate, now that you're doing reminded me, this might be the first game I remember where you could, in a beat 'em up hack and slash, charge at them. Like you could literally run real quick and just, boom, hit them with the shoulder. And that was very handy. Like that was cool.
Yeah, that's probably I use that more than the hack and slash. It was, if I saw the character, if I saw the enemy first, and I can run at them and knock them off their dragon to take their dragon, then I'll do that. But it was
The sound effects that I can think of, there's a few that
do it.
made me chuckle this time around when I played it. But yeah, so there was I don't want to call it issue limitation at the time with cartridges, at least with at the time when they developed this game,
Yeah.
to have music overlap with voice effects.
Right.
So when you get a guy down and he's done, there's always this like
Make the
pause in the
sound.
music and then just a ah,
Yeah. It's the
and then it would
yeah.
go back to the music. And I think that was taken care of by the sequel already at that point. But that was something that definitely was very dated the game, but it actually made me appreciate that that was them putting voice, recorded voice onto a cartridge, which didn't happen before that because you didn't have that in any NES games. Not that I recall anything that was like to that quality at that point for 16-bit. That was pretty
that's what I say.
revolutionary.
16-bit cartridge, mind you, and they had to, and again, it was one of those games. Again, retro gaming. That game does stick out. Obviously, we talked about it in our first episode where that particular game came out. I think a lot of people can probably relate to it also. Particularly with the original. I don't even think I played the second version or the second game that came out. I do remember, just the original Golden Axe. I remember it in the arcade. I remember it in Sega Genesis and playing that with the console. And then now with the ROM, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I have some notes I wanted to read real quick on development. So for the development portion, lead designer and producer Makoto Uchida was fond of action movies, particularly the Conan films.
Makes sense.
And he wanted to, obviously, that was heavily influenced. You could see
Yeah.
And he wanted to create a game influenced by those particular things he was watching. And he said that the development for the team was to watch some of these things and to replay it. And it took about a full year until they came up with fleshing out the ideas into reality. So Uchida's idea was to come up with what was a double dragon that was not a double dragon, since Double Dragon had already been done in the arcade as well as the NES. And he mentioned also that he cited that the original Street Fighter, which was the 1987 Street Fighter 1, was a big influence, particularly how players could combine button moves and stick presses to perform individual attacks.
That's right. So the jumping axe attack was something that was new also, because otherwise you're right. You're now combining a move where you could jump and then also press the attack move and do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you think of like, let's say, I think this is the first thing that I could reach out of my brain was like the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for NES. You couldn't do a jump kick. Like you could jump, but then as soon as you hit attack, suddenly your character's standing in the air trying to attack.
Yeah.
So
Ninja Gaiden had that too. I think where you would be able to jump and he would come out with his sword. I think at the same point. But yeah, there's not a lot of games that had it. Obviously, I think Ninja Gaiden came out way after. But yeah, the Golden Axe it's an OG for that.
So for the ports, the Sega Mega Drive and the Genesis version remained largely faithful to the arcade game, adding a level and a dual mode along with a new ending was provided for this cartridge release. So I remember when I played the Golden Axe version of the arcade and I finished it, the ending was a little bit weird. It was an ending where it broke a wall and you were able to see, figuratively speaking, you were breaking a fourth wall and you were playing the ending to then where you saw the ending being a bunch of kids in the arcade playing Golden Axe. And then the enemies would jump out of the arcade machine, invading Earth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, okay. So it was a very funny ending, just weird.
Yeah.
I don't recall now the ending for the Genesis. Do you remember?
Yeah, it was well, first the prince or the king came out, and he had to, it wasn't the actual ending. You thought it was the ending, but it was a fake ending. And then he goes into this room and says, okay, now you have to battle somebody else. And I know there was a lot of fighting still after, but again, this was the dwarf. It went to the credits, and the credits were just, it's one of those things. Again, it's you remember seeing the credits and where you rank, and it gives you like letter grades like
Right,
AA,
that's right.
BB, CC. Between the last, I want to say boss, it's not even boss, it's just a bunch of, other characters that you're still fighting. They're just in a different color. Because I guess, as you advance each stage, they're like they're this pretty much the same, except for like the skeleton that comes out later on in the game. But majority of the people that you're fighting is pretty much the same characters throughout, just a different color mode or color scheme is what I've noticed. But as far as the ending goes now, I don't remember, and I probably need to go back and recollect what happened there. I just remember the credits.
Yeah, I don't remember either. I didn't play through the entire thing, been playing, but either way, this particular port had a different ending. So now we can go back and find out what that ending was. The reception for the game was in Japan. Game Machine, which was a magazine at the time, listed Golden Axe on their first July 1989 issue as the second most successful table arcade cabinet of the month, and went on to be the 18th highest grossing arcade game of 1989 in Japan. And in the United States, it was the highest grossing arcade game of 1990 in January. And since then, there's been many releases. So there's been, which was funny because you can't, there's certain games that you don't see re-released many times over, but this being a classic, it's been released in the Sega Genesis. It's been released on the Xbox 360 had a version of the arcade. It got released on, going back again, Sega CD re-released it. And then eventually it went to iOS and on Android. So it's gone around. It's definitely been brought back many times over.
I didn't realize Xbox had it in their Xbox Live Arcade. I probably got to go look for it. Yeah,
they had their virtual console arcade for a while, and it was like their way of producing like these. It was the preliminary, like you could buy certain classics, right? And so a lot of them were the arcade versions of whatever it was, and Turtles, or in this case, they had the arcade version of Golden Axe. So they had many releases of it. The game was released as part of the handheld TV game Arcade Legends, Sega Genesis Volume 1. An enhanced remake with 3D graphics and orchestral music was released for PS2 as part of the Sega Ages line. So this got remade.
Oh, yeah.
Now I have not played that version, although I heard it from someone that used to host this show in the past.
Gotcha.
He used to call it trash. He didn't like it because he's very old school when it comes to it. And so I haven't played it, but I would venture to say I would love to try that version.
I would probably try it too. I haven't played any other version, like I said earlier. The original, and it's sometimes it's hard to beat the original, right? There's only probably one, or a couple games. Super Mario's one that stands out where you want to play the next one, and that, I think for some reason Golden Axe, it just, once you've done the original, it's kind of like, okay, what's 2 about, or what's the next one about? Again, I'll venture out to try it out.
And I always wonder like how some of these games fare story wise. So I have the plot here ready to roll. So I'm going to read it. And I just like to know this kind of thing because I look at it now as I do some writing on the side. So I'd like to know a little bit more of like, what was the idea behind this, right? Yeah. So, because as a kid, I'm not really paying attention to the story. I'm just kind of like fascinated over the beat 'em up aspect of it. So the plot being for the first installment, the game takes place in the fictional land of Uria, a Conan the Barbarian style high fantasy medieval world. An evil entity known as Death Adder has captured the king and his daughter and holds them captive in their castle. He also finds the Golden Axe, the magical emblem of Uria, and threatens to destroy both the axe and the royal family unless the people of Uria accept him as their ruler. Three warriors set out on a quest to rescue Uria and avenge their losses at the hands of Death Adder. The first is a battle axe wielding dwarf, Gilius Thunderhead, from the mines of Wolod, whose twin brother was killed by the soldiers of Adder. Another is a male barbarian, axe battler, wielding a two-handed broadsword, looking for revenge for the murder of his mother. The last is a longsword wielding Amazon, Tyrus Flare, whose parents were both killed by Death Adder. I didn't get a name for the male barbarian guy.
I was just about to bring that up. Yeah, I don't think he has a name. He's just he's just a barbarian.
He's just a male barbarian guy.
He's just male barbarian. Yeah.
Unless Axe Battler is his name.
I don't recall the name, but Gilius Thunderhead is the man in my opinion. Well, he's the character who's the go-to that I use. I just thought he was pretty cool, and yeah,
he's got the axe and everything. I mean, it's badass for sure. Let's see. The warriors rescue the inhabitants of the ransacked turtle village, which turns out to be situated on the shell of a giant turtle. The turtle takes the characters across the sea, and then they fly to the castle itself on the back of a giant eagle. Once at the castle, they defeat Death Adder, who is wielding the golden axe, and they save the land. Right. In the Mega Drive, Genesis, and PC versions, and also in other ports, the characters also battle Death Adder's mentor, Deathbringer, as the true final boss. After the final battle, the warriors receive a magical golden axe that imbues the player with immortality.
That's what it is.
It's kind of a cool story. I'm getting major Jason and the Argonauts vibes. I'm getting Lord of the Rings vibes.
Lord of the Rings for sure, because you see the map too when you're playing and it's going through different stages. You know, it says, you know, stage 1, you go and you can see yourself in the map and you're trying to get back to this castle or get back to this place where you want to save the king and the king's daughter.
Yeah, I remember all that. I think if it wasn't for the success of this game, we wouldn't have had a lot of the beat 'em ups that were so sought after this. Like, you know, I already mentioned Streets of Rage. That was one. But this game kind of like started a different vibe. It was Double Dragon, but it was you're bringing it to a medieval kind of a vibe. And
yeah,
I'm trying to think of games that had that vibe earlier. I can't think of anything except Altered Beast has sort of that vibe.
With these mystic creatures, and you could do the spells. I thought the spells was pretty cool, and having to, you know, that's one way to really, you know, clear out the stage when there's like multiple enemies. And again, the way you get the spells is funny because you kind of have to kick this little elf to get his to get your potions.
I don't know if he's an elf or a squirrel, but
I think it's a squirrel. Maybe it's a squirrel with a huge backpack with magical potions, and yeah.
I don't know. I just remember his buck teeth, so I'm assuming it might be maybe half squirrel, half elf. So the dual mode.
Dual mode.
A little bit of it.
Yes. Dual mode was exciting. You know what? When I first played it too, I gravitated first to the dual mode. I said, okay, well, let me play this and let me like see what this is my practice. Let me see what the player is doing. Let me jump. Let me attack. Let me do all this stuff. And you know, I want to say it's not like a battle royale, but it's something where, you know, you're fighting and you have your life and how much life you have. And, you know, you just, you know, let's say an enemy comes, as soon as you eliminate that enemy, another enemy comes, and then different variations of it, whether they're stronger.
It's like what we now have in our games, Horde.
Yeah.
It's Horde mode. So that was a really rendition of that, which is really cool.
And I remember, again, being when I was younger with my brother, we played the multiplayer where you could play 2 people. And I think, you know, obviously you'll go a little bit further because, you know, sometimes you'll play multiple or you'll battle against multiple enemies, and, you know, it's easier to kind of combat where you could control that.
Yeah, okay. Now 2-player for me, I would invite I had a bunch of cousins I grew up with. So it was a lot of multiplayer going on. So whenever I played 2-player, I always realized that it was a lot easier than when I would play on your own.
Yeah, because you're like, okay, you take the left of the screen, I'll take the right of the screen, or whatever the case is. You know, it's one of those things. It's easier to kind of manage the chaos a little bit when, you know, you can offset one of those to, let's say, your brother, the other multiplayer player too.
Right.
I think it makes for a great experience too, because you're kind of bonding and you're having a good time and you're playing with a buddy or a sibling or cousin, like you said, where you guys beat a game together. As far as how far dual mode goes, I don't remember because I didn't finish it this time around. So again, I don't know how far it goes, or is there just more and more enemies that come? But I would love to maybe research or maybe pull a video or something to see what the ending is like on the dual mode, or if you, because again, there's no story behind it. So what would be the ending? Would it
Right.
just be like, oh, okay, cool, you beat 100 people or whatever it is, 100 enemies? Like it's just one of
Oh,
those.
pat on the back. Good job.
Yeah, good job. There you
Now go
go.
play
Oh,
the whole game.
yeah, or well, I think it's also part of that, grading scale that they have. You get the AABB or whatever it is, and how much life you have. But I think more of it is just the experience and just the time spent playing the game, right? So, playing these games somehow connects us to our youth and how we felt back then, the whole nostalgic feel. I think that's
Time capsule.
actually,
Sure.
yeah, it's a time capsule, especially with what's going on today. And it's like, we all have our, busy lives, and, being able to kind of, take the time and be like, okay, well, I'm going to do something that I was playing in the past. And, with my younger daughter, we were playing video games, and actually I was playing one of the retro Disney games, which was pretty cool because we played Lion King.
Nice.
I remember playing that as a kid,
Impossibly hard, right?
very hard. And I cannot believe she was trying to jump over the insects, and she was getting frustrated. And I could see her getting frustrated. She goes, "Dad, can you help me?" I was like, "Sure, I can help you." And I couldn't even
Yeah.
I got to a certain point. I'm like, "All right, let's try another one, sweetie." And then we did the Aladdin, and it's same thing. I was like, I didn't realize
Yeah.
how hard the Disney games were. And hopefully I probably had, one of the cheat codes to beat it then. But just the whole, even with battle axe, with certain things, and you're experiencing this now. I think there's something there with reconnecting with the games of your youth. There's some, it's just great. It's a great feeling.
Yeah, it's great to also be able to bring then someone that, like, let's say your daughter or someone that didn't play it, right? Like, this is what you play when you're a kid. Like, watch, check it out. Check out how archaic this was. But then you see the roots, of like what would have been. Now you just made me realize this was basically early days of Horde, and you'd go and it wouldn't be quite practice. I mean, it'd be a challenge. You'd try to get through a wave of enemies over and over and see what you're made of, right? And then multiplayer, which was fun. And to this day, I was just kind of just perusing through my games and looking online for games for my girlfriend and I to play. And there's really not many that are couch co-op, as they call it now, where you can actually sit and play together. Most of them are online, or you need to have someone playing on the other end. But I think that takes so much out of the experience than when you have someone right next to you. And which is how I started this whole thing with Retro Game Night. You play with your buddies and you're all there together. This isn't like you over the internet and you can't quite see the person or hang out with them.
Screaming on a headset, right? What's doing?
There's nothing like choking your friend in real life.
Yeah.
When they beat you. But yeah, no, I'm super happy we got into this. I definitely plan to replay this and the sequels. Well, I'm sure we'll cover the sequels eventually.
Nice. We should.
And I know, I'm almost curious at this point. Now that I read the storyline, it is a little intriguing. I kind of want to know like how it progresses in the story. I would assume it wasn't like a lot of effort into the story. I don't know. Maybe someone will slap my hand on this comment, but I don't know how much they get into the story aspect for these games, or if it's just kind of like, just slap it together. It sounds good. Just get it out there. But if it is an epic story, it can continue on with the sequels. So I am definitely. So
if you want to slap Damien's hand, just comment below and go ahead and take it out on him.
Yeah, take it out on me. I will I will take the brunt of the comments here. So for the sequels and for other beat 'em ups, do you have any other favorites that you'd like to tell me before we end our show here? Earl, do you have any favorite? I know for me, like I think it might be my top of all time would be the Streets of Rage franchise. That would be my side-scrolling beat 'em up. Maybe next to the Turtles ones, but
it would
I can't
be
quite decide.
Again, Ninja Turtles. I guess we're big on Ninja Turtles here. Ninja Gaiden. I brought up Ninja Gaiden earlier in the podcast.
Okay, I still called
And
you.
yeah, transition. Yeah, Ninja Gaiden was fun. Side scrolling, you would attack and jump, and he would climb buildings, or not really the buildings, but he would like stick to the wall. Thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, the sticking to the wall thing was pretty cool. I like that.
There's You have me stumped right now. X-Men would be one, I
There you
think.
go.
Because you could again dibs on Wolverine, right? I guess everyone wanted to be Wolverine.
Heck yeah.
And X-Men was one of the great ones to play, and it was, I think, multiplayer where you could you could actually play the old retro system or the arcade version with 4 players. Obviously, you couldn't do that at home with the Genesis or Super Nintendo, whatever console it was on, because there was only 2 controllers at the time, unless it came out with the Super Nintendo. Was that the Super Nintendo? Where the 4 controllers? I don't know.
No, that would be the first one with the 4 controllers would be the Nintendo 64.
Nintendo 64.
I don't think there was anything prior to that. I definitely know no Nintendo console was 4-player yet until 64.
So
definitely
X-Men,
not
X-Men for sure. The arcade version had that 4 players. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But that was one that was the side-scrolling, slashing type attack, and you would get through stages and get to bosses and get to like certain secret levels. And I think that was, with the games itself, there's always that special like, oh, what does this game have? Because every game followed kind of the same storyline. You kind of beat a couple people, go to the boss, then but there's always certain bonuses or quirks about other games that you're like, okay, cool, that stands out. That was awesome.
Yeah, pretty cool, man. I really,
What about
really.
you?
For me, Streets of Rage. That was
You did say that.
between that and the Turtles games, but I think Streets of Rage, looking back, because I had just finished the 4th one, which was just released, I want to say last year.
Yeah.
They paid so much homage to the other games. Like so it was not just a time capsule, but it was a time capsule looking back with modern people doing this thing, and it was really cool. It was a good throwback, and it was a lot of fun to play through, and that I just realized that was my favorite franchise. I was very much looking forward to this. I mean, I will always look forward to a TMNT side scrolling, but I think I always do look forward to that, but I think that for some reason the Streets of Rage one was a little bit more, it wasn't, you didn't see or hear of it too often as opposed to Turtles. So I think for me, I was very, very enchanted by that series. And the story was actually pretty decent. Actually, now that they wrapped it back to the other ones, I realized that there was a decent story involved with this. So I definitely recommend it to anybody.
Cool. I'll probably pick it up this week.
You better research, man. Research.
I will.
Where can folks find you, Earl, on Instagram before we go?
They could find me at earl.lags on Instagram.
And you can find me, Damien_DeCarlo. Also my other podcast, Making a Geek, which you can find at makingitgeek.com. And for the Retro Game Night Instagram, you can find us at retro_game night. Until next time, everybody, make sure to keep calm and game on. Good night, everybody.
Bye.